Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Reckoning of Roku chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 49, which is called To Wicks. Once again, YouTube channel membership is enabled on the channel if you'd like to help support the channel, and subscribing also helps. So what we get here is a Roku focused chapter, but it's interesting in that we get a past life scene here where we get Roku talking to Kiyoshi, with sort of the idea being that to a certain degree Roku kind of in a way has a choice to make here of like, if he gives up he can move on, the cycle can end here and it can go on, or he can choose to kind of in a way go back and get himself out of this situation and continue on. There's sort of that idea kind of going on here. So we get this sort of, as Roku is quote-unquote dying, he has this discussion with Kiyoshi. But before that, we get him kind of trying to figure out what's going on, because there's this kind of dream sequence, kind of spirit worldy style stuff going on here, where there's a dense fog, he walks around, he's an airbender, he's at basically the Southern Air Temple, and it's the sanctuary. But now he can use his airbending to get inside, and that's what he does. The doors open and there's all the statues of the avatars. And he walks forward past the avatars. He stands next to Avatar Kiyoshi's statue, of course, the previous avatar. But then there's a statue of him beside it. And it's like him as he is right now beside Kiyoshi. And it's the idea of like, oh, I guess I'm dead. But then he realizes, wait, no, all the stuff that happened, coming here with Gyatso, ignoring Sister Dish's orders, you know, Ulo, the cave, Sozin, what was going on here? What is this? Is this a dream? Is it a vision? Is it death? He falls to his knees and just thinks about everything, that like he's failed. His journey, his era as the Avatar has not lasted very long, and he feels he has not really done anything, and he can only blame himself is what he's doing here, that he promised to not kill Ulo, but he's ended up doing that, and it was in a moment of rage to save Sozin, and he went back to doing what he didn't want to do, which was kind of focusing on the raw strength of being the Avatar to solve his problems, and he's absolutely sure, yeah, I killed Ulo. That's the situation here. Maybe the only good thing here is that it'll be a quick jump onto air in the Avatar cycle, and things will be better than that, and that, you know, he thinks Gyatso will be in a better spot going forward after the time they've had together, and he's just really thinking that, oh, this was a bit of a disaster basically. But then the Kiyoshi statue kind of in a way like awakens, and this is the appearance of actual, you know, Kiyoshi here. So we get the full description here. He took in the layered Earth Kingdom robes, the martial gauntlets, the war fans tucked into the waist sash, the blood red lips and the chalk white face paint, the firm stony gaze set below red and black streaks of makeup, and the golden fan-shaped headdress. It was Kiyoshi. Rise, she said, which is kind of funny because obviously the book is called Rise of Kiyoshi and she says rise, but he's on his knees, he gets back up, of course. And of course we get the comparison of like, Roku's quite tall, but he has to look up to her, of course, because Kiyoshi is exceptionally tall. So where am I? And what Kiyoshi says is, you fear you failed. You fear you were never truly meant to be the Avatar, but you did not fail, Avatar Roku. And he's just like, but I think I killed someone. And she just says, you did what you had to do to save others. It will not be the last time. You must strike down the lost for the sake of the greater good. And he thinks about this of like, you know, I went in with the intent of specifically not doing this, but I ended up going back to my old ways. And she, of course, the idea is they address the idea that they were of one mind, effectively. You had no other choice. The old man would not have stopped attacking. He didn't need to die. What's the alternative? I don't know. Prison, I guess? Would it have been a more humane ending for him to slowly waste away in a cage while expending countless resources to ensure he never escaped to do more harm? I don't know, but there has to be a better way. Avatar Kyoshi said nothing. Roku then says, and this is pretty important, and this is a super interesting thing, that he says this to Kyoshi and she doesn't have anything to say in response to this. That, one, there has to be a better way, but then, we can't kill our way to peace. Kyoshi kept her silence. And he wants to say more, but he realizes, no, there's no point having this discussion and going back and forth on the idea of no one's ever truly too far gone, that sort of whole idea. But he's like, how could he? In the final reckoning, his time as the Avatar had lasted a few brief months, while hers had spanned more than 2 centuries. And he just makes the comparisons back and forth. He has mastered one element. She's a fully realized Avatar. He had failed in his first test, and she has done countless things, basically. How can he possibly argue with someone who is so successful, such a legend as the Avatar, when he has done nothing? It says here, she was an Avatar, he was a placeholder, a pause, a flame that flickered, then went out. And Kyoshi's advice to Roku before Roku wakes up again: the only true mistake we make is not looking within. And at this point, his statue being there vanishes. Maybe his flame hadn't quite gone out yet. He didn't know what death felt like, but maybe it wasn't this. Unless he let it be, unless he gave up, maybe there was still a chance if only he chose to take it. And so, yeah, we do have a final scene here, which we will get to here. But that's Kyoshi's advice. And I think you have to remember this in terms of like, what does that mean? The important thing with this is we will get more information on Kyoshi in a couple of chapters' time. And I think you have to remember what she has said here, because it's clearly done with sort of the intent of addressing what comes up later with her. That, of course, being that Roku is effectively having a partial discussion with Kyoshi on the idea of should you kill your enemies and is it the right thing to do? And she, of course, typically thinks that, yeah, it is the right thing. It is a way to bring justice, is to defeat the enemy, that sort of thing. Roku, of course, doesn't feel that way. But her advice is, the only true mistake we make is not looking within. And most avatars, when they give that final piece of advice, it's the idea that this is something that it took them a long time to learn. So I think the way to think about this is almost that Kyoshi had to look within, and that this was maybe a mistake that she made in her life, was maybe not for a long time looking within herself about these type of things, because she doesn't overly defend herself from some of the things that Roku says about the way things perhaps should be done. And given that Kyoshi, if there's one thing she maybe does have a sort of slightly bad reputation for, is that she is the Avatar who has maybe killed a little bit too much to maintain peace. Even if you can justify all of those situations, the fact that the Avatar has been forced to kill so many times is not the best approach to have, and the idea of like overly defending that perspective. I think with Roku and Ulo, you get it because it was a battle to the death. Roku was defending himself from someone who was trying to kill him, and he was trying to protect someone else as well at the same time. But the idea is that it's telling with Roku that he still blames himself, even though he kind of has the get out kind of clause on this to a certain degree. But anyway, then Roku wakes up. He's obviously covered in rubble kind of once again, like he was in an earlier chapter. But this time, you know, he can't really call out to anyone. He has no idea who's actually around him. Instead, this time he thinks of Kyoshi. He thought of Kyoshi. He remembered that although she had appeared to him as a separate entity, that was an illusion. They were one, 2 wicks lit from the same flame. He looked within. Then he moved the earth. So this is Roku earthbending for the first time here after having a connection moment with Kyoshi. So pretty cool here that we get Roku's first earthbending to basically sort of save himself and Sozin from the rubble from the collapsed sacred cave here. But that is where the chapter ends, and we're pretty much in wrap-up at this point, because the core conflict is now over. It's just, okay, everyone needs to recover. What is left of the clan on the island? What are we going to do with this place now that it's public? And one detail that I think I skipped over a little bit here that is really important as well is this. He reached for young Gibbs' energy, but came up as empty as a bucket drawn from an empty well. The power is gone. And obviously the idea is that, well, he's destroyed the cave. The central hill where the light would hit is gone. The cave is not really a cave anymore, so it's not really containing what's in it. It's just open, an open kind of like pit almost is what they're in anymore. So yeah, I guess for the most part, like the energy, there's nothing kind of maintaining it here. The equinox is now over, and there's nothing to store the energy in there anymore. So that basically seems to resolve that issue as far as we're aware. We just need to get some confirmation on that ultimately. But they do acknowledge that that energy isn't there. So when Roku earthbends, it's standard earthbending. I'm not sure if we are meant to interpret this as Avatar state earthbending, because I think it is meant to be the idea that he just normally earthbend. And they don't highlight that he goes into the Avatar state. It's more of like, even though they note the connection to Kyoshi, I think it is meant to more be the idea of, no, this is him earthbending for the first time, and it's not like overly enhanced necessarily, but I suppose that's slightly up for debate. Doesn't matter too much. The point is he has earthbent as the Avatar in some way. But yeah, there are my thoughts on the chapter. I definitely think that when I first read this, I would definitely say that the Kyoshi scene with Roku maybe didn't do as much for me as I thought it would, because you always look forward to these scenes, and for it to be a little bit like Kyoshi doesn't really say that much that's super interesting. But when you look back on this with the context of what's going to be said about Kyoshi later, I think it does have a little bit more impact. So I will do my best when I get to that chapter to kind of reference this so we can properly talk about it overall. Because I do think it gives us a somewhat interesting insight into Kyoshi as a character, especially older, Kyoshi, which we mainly know a younger Kyoshi. That's the key point. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this whole chapter. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.